Welcome to the second installment of House421 Conversations. I'm Sara bin Safwan, founder of Banat Collective and curator at Guggenheim Abu Dhabi. Joining me by phone as we shelter from the spreading pandemic are Hashil Lemki and Munira Saigh, artist and curator of the show The Cup and the Saucer. The show opened at House421 a little before cultural institutions closed their doors to COVID-19, but will remain on display until the community is able to experience it in full. The Cup and the Saucer is an exhibition that explores the breadth of the notions of unity, separation, and individualism. The show seeks to discuss the metaphoric and momentary divorce that takes place when a cup parts from its saucer, and how within that moment and that movement of estrangement, a single item breaks into two. A once whole object becomes two separate individuals. In preparation for this exhibition, Munira and Hashid met every Monday for 2 years, discussing art, life, and theory, and slowly building what became their largest show to date. This relationship between the two strikes me as an integral not only to its development, but its final presentation, as well as to its location in the context of the UAE creative ecosystem. Thank you for being with me today, Munira and Hashid.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
So I'd like to begin first by going into both of your relationships, of how you met and how did the process of beginning this journey towards Hashil's solo exhibition begin?
Hashil and I met, or formally met during a talk that took place, a roundtable discussion that took place with the C Fellows in Hashil's cohort, which is so interesting to think that we were on a panel discussion together, because that happened and then it sort of slipped my mind completely. But I saw Hashil's work in that cohort and in the exhibition that was up at House421, and I just kept going and coming back to the work and thinking, like, who is this guy? Like who is this person that's thinking in this way? And just, his work is super playful but has so much depth. There's a criticality to it, but it's presented in a way that's very extremely approachable. And it's very detail oriented. So I was very intrigued. And then I guess time passed, and we follow each other on Instagram. And he mentioned that he was gonna drop by. He wanted to talk to me, so I said okay. And I was still programming at House421, so he shows up, and then he's like, he just casually goes, he's like, I'm looking for a curator to work with, because I want to work towards a solo exhibition. Do you know anybody? And then I was just like, yes, I do. He was like, I'd like to work with you. And I was like, okay, great. That sounds amazing. And I still wasn't sure about my plans for the future after my time with House421. And quickly he was like, what days work for you? And I said Mondays. And he's like, okay, let's meet next Monday. And that was that. I mean, the first session what happened in the same time while we were at Warehouse, sitting in the courtyard, and we started to discuss points of interest. And I was talking to him about what I find interesting, which is understanding both spectrums or both extremes on a single spectrum. And so we started jotting down notes, and then the next Monday came along and I met up with him, and that was every Monday for the rest of the Mondays, and many other days too outside of just Monday, in which we started to meet up.
I find it so interesting that the friendship blossomed, as well as kind of going into this journey of creating work together. And I'm wondering how, in terms of both of your disciplines, Munira, you're a writer, and Hashil, you are a visual artist, and how did you find those two disciplines converge with one another?
I think
Go ahead.
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, this is something that we came to realize over, the course of the 2 years Mondays that we were sharing together. That our thoughts were in the right place, just the outcome or the treatment was different. Mine was in visual treatment, and Munira's was in writing. And the structure of the Monday meetings actually became like me just showing Munira, the body of work that I've been producing for, I don't know, like since New York. So that's like almost like 10 years. And just like show, like every Monday we'll go through, a certain body of work. Like this is what I did back in like 2007 and then 2008 and so on and so forth. And then she's like, you know what? I actually have some writings that I want to share with you. I was like, yeah, let's go into kind of like shifting the the focus on my practice and like actually looking into the writings, and we're like we're talking about the same things, but in a different format. and and then later as we moved forward with the project, where looking back now, like we actually got together and we started building things from scratch. Like we had no
Absolutely.
idea where this is going or what's the direction, or even the warehouse. Like the warehouse was not part of the discussion. We did not even approach them at that time that we have this project. It was just genuinely two thinkers coming together, looking at work, past work, and then finding the connections, um, and realizing there's so much similarities between us, and building up from that, like the show The Cup and the Saucer arrived. um, yeah.
I think to piggyback on what Hashim was saying, it was so interesting for me because interesting and also slightly scary to see somebody thinking about what you're thinking about in the same sort of level of detail. I with my I so I have my personal writings that generally I keep to myself, and share with a small group of people, but not always. And so looking at Harsh's work and having these discussions and like, and I was like, is this really happening? Like, is this for real that there's somebody who is thinking in the same way, but the outcome is completely different? Like the visual it's like a visual language as opposed to a written language, and but the way that we sort of pull what we're trying to say in order to make it playful or approachable, or speaking through like metaphor, all of these things they translate and from my text to his work, and from his work into my text, later on. When I started working on the text for the exhibition, my curatorial text is not a curatorial text per se. It's more of a, it's more of like an experiment somehow of words, words and descriptions. And I don't go into I don't go into the literal, like, and this work ta 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 ta, but I start to describe the emotions and the sort of the mental framework that went into this in a much more poetic way. And so when you read it, you take what you want from it, and you can read more into it, exactly as you can with Hush's work. So for me, it's very exciting to see the exhibition come to life, and with time, inshallah, the catalog come to life, and how they speak to one another, because they are very much two of the same, as Hashid was saying, but produced in different mediums.
Yeah, and And to just to add one more point, at some point, like we started, yes, as Munira mentioned, like formally like a curator and an artist, and everyone had their own hat. But then as we progressed throughout, our travels, and like we got to know each other on a personal level, I think slowly we kind of like forgot like subconsciously about the titles. Like, you are a curator, I'm an artist, these are the expectations. We're more of like collaborators, and I think that's something that really enriched the show in a way that we're moving, like we're pedaling together at the same rate, with the same ideas, like towards the same light. Like, our brains like came together and kind of produced the work, whether it is the writing, whether it is the visual language. It is done
It's
by
both of us.
both of us. Yeah.
And Hashel's work, like everything, the visual production that we see in the exhibition, was produced for the show. So at a certain point, we were looking back and we were thinking of putting together an exhibition with already created works. And Faisal came back to us and he was like, guys, like, this isn't a retrospective, this is a solo. And it hit us both quite intensely. And we went back and I was telling him, I was like, you know what? Like, what we're discussing is so contemporary and it's so much what we're experiencing in the now. Why not have a visual response to these discussions? So it really feels like this like brainchild that we've had, together, and to continue on with sort of this role between curator and artist. I think it became a partnership, it became a collaboration, it quickly became like a togetherness that is more about the basis of it is more about friendship. I mean, until today, like, we speak about very similar things and we share our ideas, and I feel like the Monday meetings have become a part, like a ritualistic part of my life that I can't see my life without, And so, although we're not working towards anything at this point, we're still, helping one another get to where we need to go on a personal level through our professions and so on. So, and I really have a problem with the way the notion of a curator is constructed, from past experiences where the curator tells the artist what to do, and the artist responds and does what the curator asks, as opposed to this sort of equalization between the two labels of artist and curator, and build up that happens naturally and organically.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think that bond that you both have created with each other definitely makes the exhibition a very strong exhibition, where it definitely does move away from this very corporate sense of what an exhibition is, and what we usually are accustomed to as well. And I think there's also a level of trust that goes into this relationship as well. I mean, meeting on a weekly basis, and I assume also you were meeting at Bait 15. Were these meetings, these ritual meetings, sort of a safe space for you both to discuss?
Absolutely, 100%. I think we met between Bait 15 and Hashan's place, and the spaces were very influential on the conversations. Our conversations changed somehow in accordance to where we were, between which place we were in, and I think to have a safe space, to have a place that extends itself with its creativity and that energy, you are able to commit your time without even feeling like you're spending so much time in that place. And what was interesting is a lot of our thinking happened in Hash's place, and a lot of our getting things done happened at Bait 15. And so we sort of, without realizing, like, يعني, I'd be like, Hashil, hey, let's meet at Bait 15 today. And he'd be like, okay. And we would end up, like, now that I look back, we would end up realizing that this sort of balance between the two, they both gave us a different type of energy, the two spaces, but they were both very much needed. And I'm a firm believer that space and place and your environment really influences, your being and your existence. And I'm extremely grateful to have a space like Bait 15 in Abu Dhabi, because it really allowed Hashil and I to believe that things can exist outside of the paradigms of institutional framework. You know what I mean? So when we were there, we were still discussing, as Hasha said, we didn't even know where House was gonna, take the project on. But we believe that regardless, there was going to be a way that this was going to work.
And in terms of in terms of your research for this exhibition, what were the books or artists or theories that were influential, and is there anyone that was there anyone in particular that informed the exhibition?
Before I answer this question, I was just gonna add like one more point about the meeting points. We also, towards the end, we added Munira's place, and that kind of informed the curated room, mainly, where we were discussing how the curated room would operate within like the other 8 sub-themes. So that's also an important place for me, where I got access to get most of the work that it's in the curated room, and kind of like develop discussions around that idea of almost some. And I know we'll go through the sub themes at some point throughout the discussion, but I just wanted to highlight that Munira's place also was part of the meeting points. And yeah. So going back to the question that you just asked about, the research was already kind of in my head, like I'm searching towards something that I couldn't really define, and we've had like several trips that kind of informed a lot throughout, the past 2 years when we were working. We went to Kochi Biennale, and then we went to Spain, and we traveled in between. And those 2 trips, kind of like every trip is a milestone in a way. Like we sit and discuss, and we kind of like formalize these sweet ideas that we're having in our heads. And the formal research to me happened. I don't know, like the word research sounds like super heavy, because what we're presenting in the show or what we're discussing to me are very honest and genuine questions that we're having. So we came up with the term like facts sheets. And at some point in the process, we invited four students from Zayed University and one student, no, 4 students from NYU and 1 student from Zayed University who kind of like been working with us towards the end. And 2 in particular, Daniel, and they were producing these fact sheets, and we've decided to include them in the publication. So you get to see also the process in a different format. We're not interested necessarily like, oh, showing you images how departure and linger, kind of progress in production, but we're going to present to you a research on penguins, and then you kind of like connect the two. So it's not like super literal process, but then you get to see the thinking and the justification of why such thing exists. Or like bananas, and Jabal Hafid, Milky Way. So you get a lot of like one page research, fact sheet, very simple, very straight to the point, bullet points about, different aspects that that we're discussing throughout the exhibition. And it's up to you again. The show is not trying to impose, or like there isn't any imposition on like the way you should experience something, but there are like these little hints for you to kind of like decide if you want to take or not. And at the end of the day, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, then you enjoy, the way you want. And we leave it open. It's an open-ended conversation.
I would like to add on to that with regards to our trips, which were extremely influential. And you're asking if there was a particular person or genre that that has influenced the work. When I first started meeting with Hashim, in the background on the television, he always had on mute like clips from Dali, like Dali doing stuff, Dali, and and the people around Dali and his that giant cat that he had, Dali's house, Dali's neighborhood. That it's already I think surrealism is something that is important to both of us, and I would like to. I would like to bring that up as a point of like theory or artistic framework, and at a certain point we started reading like the text, and it was only silent, and we would read the text and we'd be like, oh my goodness, oh my god, wait, hold on, pause that, I want to take a picture of that. Like questions of the self kept coming up, and questions of what is reality and how can reality be skewed, and who owns reality to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, and for I mean, like Sarah, you know me, and Hashid knows me, but I always say that the only thing that the only king that exists is perspective. Like, perspective is king. The way you look at things shapes and defines your reality, and I can shape and define the reality the way I choose to look at things. And and this is like very basic thinking, but if you are able to sort of master that thought, then you can evade the reality that you're in, like the surroundings that you're in. You can transcend into something else. And I think as little Munira, I remember the first artist that I ever learned about in like grade 3 was Dali, and I was like beyond myself. I'm like, what do you mean melting clocks? And how can clocks melt? And I feel like that spark that I had as a child never went away when it comes to surrealism. And I met Hashil, and he had that same sort of magnetic pull towards surrealism. And eventually on the screen was Dali's house, and on top of Dali's house, it's in a port town outside of Barcelona, there's a massive egg, okay? And he was like, I really want to go there. It's somewhere in Spain, I think outside of Barcelona. And I was like, yeah, I think that's great. And then he's like, do you want to go? And I said, yalla, let's do it, And we planned it for the summer, last summer. And we went, and it was sort of the final hurrah for both of us with regards to tying everything together. After the summer, Hashil came back and sort of really pushed through visual production. intensely, and I feel like the visual production is very much informed by surrealist thought, uh, surrealist behavior, and to a degree, the metaphors that I pull in my writing are also borrow from surrealist writing. So I would really think to highlight and anchor surrealism as a major influence on both of us.
Uh, and Munira, you spoke briefly about the self and how, I think throughout the exhibition, you very much see this sort of play of the subconscious, and ultimately, which is a portrayal of the self, and flitting between reality and fantasy and notions of the dream. And I'd like to ask to both of you, how do you define the selves? And we spoke about this before. Do you believe that there is one self, or do you see a multitude of selves that manifest into one being?
Now, my personal belief is that in a single self, there are many selves. There is the self that is Mnira, the daughter. There is the self that is Mnira, the pensive writer. There is the self that is Mnira, the chatty curator. Like there are many different elements that define different parts of me, but those different parts of me have their own spectrums. They are their own thing. They exist fully as another entity within me. Therefore, there's no sense in having. I mean, there are people who have one single self, but when it comes to me, this is something that perhaps in the past I used to struggle with, and this is where you can begin to plug in duality into this sort of theory of self, or many selves within one, and when you begin to sort of understand this push and pull between understanding what is right for you versus understanding what is right for a community versus understanding what is right on a globally, on a wider scale. You're forced to play with your thoughts between you and also you. And I think that this is something that takes a lifetime to master. And during this time that we are in right now, where you have a lot of time to spend with the self, you really begin to get to know those corners that you might not have gotten to before, that are really dusty and need a little bit of attention. And what happens there is, when you arrive to that part that perhaps you don't know as well, you begin to unwind another self within yourself. So you begin to unfold another spectrum, another set of understanding with regards to order and chaos. And what becomes interesting is how all of those things inform what we traditionally have learned to know, which is the single self. But I mean, and it's very hard to think, for me to think, that there is only within a single being, even outside of myself. Let's say if you're looking at a tree, you have the tree exists, but within it needs water, and water is a different body and it's a different self. Therefore, these two merge to create another thing. So this mergence is very much what we begin to discuss with regards to collective identity in the exhibition. But we both believe that collective identity is you can arrive to collective identity only through the understanding of the self. So that's my thoughts on that question.
Yeah, I do agree with. No, I was just gonna add, adaptability also to the environment that
Absolutely.
you're in is very important for the self to arrive, within the multiple selves that we hold within. Like, you need to know when to show that self versus the others. And that's, as what Munira was mentioning, like, you need to become a master to be able to exist and contribute and have a voice. Otherwise, it becomes noise.
And on that note, what are your thoughts on the influence of individualism? And just for the sake of relevancy, how do you think this has been affected by the current global pandemic?
I don't, I don't know. I might be biased because, you know, um, I've been like so close to the work, and I'm still attached to it. But I think like it's what we're discussing in this show is so relevant right now. The sub themes, like whenever I think about this show, I'm like, oh my God, like look at Versailles. Like all of the paintings are abandoned spaces, like kind of romanticizing about this idea of like, you know, whether you're this or that, you still have to stay home and like look at things from far away. We're all going through that right now. And then thinking like about the next sub theme, screensaver, like looking at what we're going through, it's like it's so surreal to me that it feels like it's almost like a screensaver, that it's we're all going through it and having to like stop everything and kind of like, but in like the screensaver in the background, like the engines are still working, like the computer is still working and doing things. It's just like there is this kind of a visual break from everything where you have to step back and kind of like take a break to process. Funny enough, like I was just watching a video today. There was a zebra in Jumeirah streets. I'm like, what's happening in the world? Like animals are taking over. And then I think about the partial nigger painting. There's animals in the golf course field, and like, I don't know, like it feels so surreal for us. It's almost like we're kind of like anticipated what's gonna happen, whether consciously, subconsciously, I don't know. But since we talk about energy a lot and like how much this project have informed us and the people around us, and I think now it's kind of like reaching out to even bigger audience, and like everything that we're discussing somehow, it is so relevant. I don't know, it sounds a little bit crazy. I might be biased, I might be crazy, but it's real.
I'm going to join Hashal's crazy and realness. And as always, right by your side, Hash. Um, I find it very surreal, especially now that the show is up online, and I like kind of looked at it through my phone, and I thought, this is exactly what we are discussing with regards to screensavers, like arriving to a reality that is hypothesized and like is groomed. It's a groomed reality. Like it's a Manira at 8:30 a.m. like struggling to get to work when I did have a 9 to 5, and and looking at my screensaver and just being like, where is that? Where am I? Like there's this disconnect between your physical reality and the reality um, uh, that is being imposed onto you through a screen. And like and my phone just reminded me or shared with me last week that like my screen time went up like 10%, and I'm not a telephone person, and I found that very strange. I was just like, why is that? And I realized it's because it's there, and it's the only way for us to communicate with the ones that we love, and the ones that we love, somehow when you're presenting yourself through your phone, you're always presenting your best self, so it's very interesting. Again, here there's another level of duality that's taking place, which is something that the sub theme Screensavers discusses quite deeply, and very in a very intimate way. And so this يعني تصادم, or this sort of like clash between what is real, and it's right outside of our noses. It's right there. It's outside of the doors of your house, but you are confined to a particular square meterage, and that's it. And that's something that is being discussed within that sub theme, say Screensavers. And with regards to the overall theme of the individuality and collective identity, and the separation that has to take place from the individual, from the collective identity, in order to come back to his or her place within the collective identity, is something that we're all going through right now. I mean, COVID-19 is like, it's a thing, like everybody is, that it's the dinner table discussion topic,
It's a
like
hashtag.
favorite topic on. بالضبط, exactly. It is a hashtag. This is what we are all collectively going through now. That is a collective identity, COVID, let's all freak out and let's get tests, and and that's great, but that's collective identity in the sense where fear takes over and it becomes the one thing that consumes everyone. Now, you have the individual who will be like, okay, I'm scared with everybody else, but I am going to take a few steps to the left, find Hashim, hold his hand and continue taking more steps to the left, and separate from the collective identity and begin to understand this pandemic on a more individual scale, on a more intimate and close scale that really begins to define your sense of self, as opposed to everybody's sense of selves in one particular way, drawn out by the media in one type of frame. So Hashim discussed the fact like that he was like he saw a zebra running the streets of Dubai. And that is very Hashil of him to notice that, while everybody else is freaking out. Hashil is like, these these animals are they're coming. And then on my side, my only wish after the exhibition opened was to be by nature and with nature, in order to sort of reset, to begin to have these discussions with myself. And I haven't been able to write since the exhibition. And prior to the exhibition, I had severe writer's block for about like 4 or 5 months. So as of 2 days ago, something clicked. And the thing that clicked was my individuality and individual voice rising again, because I chose not to engage in conversations that I found to be stimulating the power of collective identity, and chose to, engage with it in a detached manner, and then further to engage with my thoughts, like just think about, how very very simple things, like the first thought that I had and that I wanted to begin writing about is this notion of the dream state, because this is a dream state almost. Things are on hold, and there's like a blanket agreement across the world. So how does that dream state translate to the individual that is Mnira? So I'm really hoping to continue with this practice in order to begin, a new body of writings that you never know might influence the next thing Hashil and I do together.
Definitely a collective, anxiety going around this time. That you now have this flexibility of time in your hands, and even the earth itself is going through kind of a very transformative stage. We don't understand yet how we are going to act once things are open again. But I wanted to just hone in onto that kind of concept of renewal and rebirth, and also which also implies transformation. And I think that this is a very integral theme to the exhibition, and throughout many of the sub themes, such as sprinkles, where you are taking things and repurposing them, and control and guilt, and birth and earth also touches upon this concept, and even in Abbey, where there are these objects that have been either repurposed, appropriated, or transformed to create a new meaning. And hopefully, once all of this comes through, there we would come to also a collective understanding of the new meaning of life. And I just wanted to ask as well, how does this come into play in the exhibition?
Is something that is essential to the understanding that anchors the exhibition of within the self there are many selves. So transformation is something that exists when you take yourself and you expose it to something else. Say, for the sake of this particular podcast, I'll give the example of Hashid and Amnira before Hashid and Amnira. It's like my exposure to Hashid transformed me, and my older self still exists, but there was a rebirth that took place. And it took place because I was given respect, I was given trust, I was given a safety, the safe space to just really be very open, and that is a very rejuvenating process. I mean, you discussed the earth and the situation that we're in now, and this cycle that's happening. It's like an end of a cycle, and the end of the cycle, usually at the very end, you're just kind of cleansing, and this cleanse is necessary to arrive to rebirth, or to a new self, or to your next iteration, the next edition of the self, and just to go a little bit deeper into through the sub theme that is birth and earth. Birth and earth defines beginnings through the notion of birth. So your birth into the next day, your birth into the next hour, your physical birth into the earth, and so on. But then earth becomes a secondary part of that tag team, and earth represents this notion of cyclicality, this continuous, infinite notion of time. The fact that things don't actually end; they just reinvent themselves. They continue. They continue through an artwork that has a banana that's been dried up, hanging in chains with these frames, half frames that extend all the way to the left-hand side of the work, and then at the bottom there are nail clippers that extend down. So there's this expansion that's taking place, and the banana is a reused banana from Abu Dhabi art when there was the banana installation. So that banana has another life, outside of banana bread that some people had done with the bananas that they picked up, and outside of the installation that actually took place. So that's one of the examples, and I think another sub theme that I would really like to hone in on is the next sub theme within the exhibition, which is Versailles. And Versailles is this sort of like the ultimate arrival of the self, like this high peak of existence, like this notion of arrival. To arrive at an end point, you have to understand birth and earth. You have to understand this sort of cyclical, continuous notion of triggers that influence how you respond or what you do within the exhibition. Really begins to set the scene for the rest of the exhibition, and set the scene with regards to what we believe this rejuvenative cycle of the self looks like, what the points are, what beginnings look like, and what endings look like. And then so you're introduced to that in the very beginning of the exhibition, and then the rest of the exhibition shows you that the in between state of rejection and reflection, of screensavers, of guilt, control and guilt, of lingering departure, and first glance. So it's all of the halat, or all of the emotional spaces that you experience when you're trying to get from a beginning point to an end point. So the beginning and the end are discussed in the very beginning of the exhibition, and the rest of the exhibition shows you that sort of that journey, the journey of the self.
This body of work kind of like talks about the idea of returning objects from previous experiences, and kind of how do you readdress them. There isn't like hypothetically speaking, a garbage chute, where you just throw something and it's gone. It's still there. You just need to deal with it.
Absolutely.
And you keep like reinventing it. You rebirth it. You readdress it until like it makes sense again. And the way if you come to my studio, I always have like.
So I'd like to draw on to the kind of section in the show, which is the curated room with an exhibition titled Almost Home, and it is curated by yourself, Hashil, and I would like to just question about why was it important to switch the roles of artist and curator. I mean, the kind of artist as curator concept actually draws on from a large historical background, going actually much further back, and from what I know in just Western art history. A more recent example would be Andy Warhol, for example, in the early 70s. And I'd just like to quote actually Hans-Ulrich Obrist states that the curator does not merely display objects within a space, but brings different cultural spheres into contact, and as such acts as mediator between artworks, objects, and ideas. So again, I'll ask, why was it important to switch the roles of artist and curator, and how does the exhibition take place within the exhibition, and also just on with your ideas, how did you feel about switching these roles?
I don't know at what point throughout the Monday meetings that we were having that we came up with this idea, and I don't know how it came across, but I think like my role in Bait 15 as a member and a co-founder, and the things that I've been interested in on a personal level, sort of like were like would operate around the idea of being a curator, but it was not formally to me understood. And on another level, like this is a huge moment to me in my career as an artist, where I felt I would like to share the light with other artists and artists who think similarly to me. There's a lot of artists around us today, almost like a mass production of artists happening in the region. And I just wanted to like really zoom in. And the idea of home, when you talk about the self, you talk about idea of rejection and reflection, you talk about the ideas of control and guilt, like how all of this fits in if you don't really have a home to belong, somewhere to belong. And I think for a long time we were like struggling and trying to go back and forth and kind of understand this exercise of me we're switching hats. I become the curator within my solo show, and we had so many artworks, so many names, so many ideas, but I think towards the end we kind of like decided to go with the 8 artists that we have right now. And the discussion that happened was like us as a, I don't know what it called, like a, a second or like a or a current like practitioners in the scene who got educated overseas, and the idea of language. Most of our education is in English, and how do you define home versus how do you define home in Arabic versus in English is very important. There's a huge gap where I thought that could be interesting to kind of present, highlight this idea of almost being home, because you can never conquer anything. Like there is always room for growth and aspiration. So we came up with this title of Almost Home, and you enter from curated room or from birth and earth, but at some point, like the two shows kind of inform each other in a gentle way.
It's a very trivial topic, within the art sphere here in the UAE, and I think it has informed all of our practices, even myself included. Now that the exhibition has opened, you were able to see some responses before Warehouse had to close. But what has been the response so far from the viewers and the audience?
I think so far the responses have been very positive. There's been a lot of sort of like applaud behind the fact that Hashil and I started on this without like any initially any funding or any place that this exhibition would be homed in. And then the fact that we started moving towards Warehouse, or approached Warehouse with the idea, and then put the show together through Warehouse. I think that that within itself, a lot of the creatives within the community were talking about how important that sort of shift is, where the creative approaches the institution as opposed to vice versa. And about the exhibition itself, I think what's been really interesting are the questions that have come up. People have been very engaged with the work and with the sub-themes, and have been commenting that the exhibition is very engaging, it's very rich. There's a denseness to it that is worth a few visits in order to kind of allow the exhibition to settle in their you know in their mind. So I'm so far. I mean, it's been just 1 week in which the exhibition was open, but that's been the background or the sort of the information that I've heard or has been said to me directly.
Yeah, I think also like to touch on what Munira just mentioned, the responses are super positive and that's great. But maybe we had like expectations that there will be more critical write up or review on the show, and that didn't happen until now. We hope like once the show reopens, we get a chance to hear from like an art critic or other curators who want to comment or get like a little bit more scientific in the sense of like commenting on the work rather than just applauding and praising us, because that's not what we both kind of intended to get out of the show.
You know, one of the things that was very frustrating for both Hashim and I is all of a sudden a lot of the media wanted to cover the exhibition as Emirati curator and Emirati artist join forces, and wow, like kind of like belittle the work and sort of congratulate identity without even bothering to look or think about the work, you know what I mean, or talk about the work. I'm from the Emirates. I am proud to be Emirati, and I will always be. But alongside that, it's a matter of the story becomes a matter of like of identity as opposed to what we are trying to get to, which also tackles the subject of identity, but in a much more intricate way.
I think that we can observe that the country itself and including the arts landscape is very much in a developmental phase, and also a lot of transformation is going on. And I think that what's really great about this exhibition and your guys' practices is that you are also a part of an entire movement, I think, in the UAE that is moving towards becoming more open with critique and discussion. And also with the help of the role of the institution playing in that part as well, to help push those ideas forward. And I definitely think that in the future, this will definitely be one of those pivotal moments that people will be able to look back on. Now that the 2-year journey has ended, what is your reflection on that experience? And I hope you would also be able to share, if you have any ideas, what's in store for the future. Even if it's whether are you still going to be working together and individually, what is that future sort of looking like now post opening?
The future is now and it's every day. There isn't like, the way I see it, I'm back in my studio. Yes, I want to say yes, that we're going to collaborate in the future. And like we also aspire this show gets to travel and gets to touch more people, and whether it's within the UAE, whether within the region, outside, you know, any opportunity. And the whole format, I think, is quite adaptable to like the changes and upgrades. Something that I just shared with Munira immediately after the recent challenges is I found myself like wanting to paint and continue working, and I don't know, there's like so many things that are maybe like not worth to mention, but like maybe I can say I found my canvas supplier out of canvas because the factory in China like shut down. So I started like going to all these different bookstores in UAE, I mean in Abu Dhabi, and like collecting canvases just because I need to feel safe. And I started painting again. I'm going to the studio, producing without any purpose, without any not purpose, without any clear direction or a project. So yeah, so I'm painting again American landscapes that I'm focused on right now, and that would be like the next iteration of Versailles if that gets to continue traveling.
We're also very much hoping to get this show to travel. Um, and I think that's probably our next sort of like professional goal together. Outside of that, I think يعني on a more personal note for me, I feel like I'm at a point where I promised myself after the exhibition that all I will do is refuel and sort of take the time to read and write and arrive to new ideas and sort of like reset my mind and have like a rebirth of sorts where as opposed to so that's I think that's where I'm at for the future.
Yeah, the future is amazing, and possibilities are endless, and we're so lucky, and so I'm so honored to be a citizen of the UAE, where like economically our possibilities are so fluid. It's just a matter of knowing exactly what you need and moving forward with that. Like you need to have clarity, and I think this is something that we're starting to learn slowly, that there are resources and everyone is so generous, everyone wants to support everyone, but you can't expect support without direction, and this is very important to all of my fellow artists who want to do things. Like just put it down on a paper, have a clear idea, and then move forward with it. You'll get supported.
Just to close off, I think for me this overall was a huge learning curve, as all of the exhibitions that I've participated in are. But this one, you're learning and you're kind of learning how to do things as you go along on your own, as opposed to having, working with other curators. I think this is the first time where I was able to sort of shape my curatorial practice through my own personal practices and my own sort of rhythm and everything that comes along with that. And we learned a lot on a professional note with regards to what an institution may need for an exhibition at the scale of the exhibition that we did. And so it was great. We also managed the interns, who were fantastic, and I really don't think this exhibition would have happened without them. You had Noor, Hassa, Jacob, and Danny, and I feel like we all became such a tightly knit family, and the way that we worked with one another was super essential, and a big part of this exhibition is them, and a big part of our learning curve is us working alongside them. I'm very grateful for this experience, and I came out of on the other end of this exhibition as somebody with more tools for my practice.
Thank you so much, Munir and Hashil, for allowing us to see into your process and your experience and your journey into the first solo exhibition for Hashil. And thank you so much
And Munira.
Definitely. I mean, it's very much the both of you in this process. And to the viewers, thank you so much for listening to the second episode of Warehouse 421 Conversations. You are all welcome to visit warehouse421.ae, where Munir and Hasha guide you through the cup and the saucer on a virtual tour. Be sure to keep in touch on Warehouse 421 platforms to know when to expect the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Warehouse. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.